Hello and welcome to another episode of Brothers Creed podcast, where we talk about motivation, experiences, and exploring the world around us. We're the Thomas Brothers, and I'm Jared.
And I'm Ethan, and today we have a very personal topic to the podcast. We're going to talk about building our personal creed and why it is important for you and us to have a personal creed in your life. There are so many different aspects of a creed. We're going to go through some of the definitions. We're going to go through why it's important. We're going to give some examples, and we're talking about how to build your own personal creed in your life. So it's going to be a good one. Let's do it.
You can't climb the ladder of success with your hands in a pocket.
We will not go quietly into the night.
They tell me you're a man with true grit.
I am the one who knocks.
Don't ever tell me what I can't do, ever!
That's how winning is done.
All right, so one of the things that I think is interesting, and thinking about a creed, which is a set of principles or beliefs that guides one's actions. If you've listened to any of our podcast episodes, you know that we say that every time. We ask all of our guests to share an example of their personal creed with us, or just a snippet of their personal creed. When I think about all the creeds that are out there, you think about all these code of conducts throughout history. There's a code of chivalry that the knights used to align to or prescribe to. There's Bushido. We actually talk about that in one of our upcoming Loyalist episodes. The Bushido, the warrior, the samurai code. There's something called a warrior ethos. That's actually what Benner Call talked about, his warrior ethos. There's the pirate's code. He who falls behind gets left behind.
It's more of a guideline.
Yeah. There's the Spartan code. There's a code of, most martial arts have a code of conduct. In fact, I was looking at one. There's a code of conduct for people who do fencing, fencers. Not people who build fences, people who fence. There's a code of conduct in your workplace. It's like we don't, we don't do this to people. We don't discriminate against people. Like, this is a minimum standard of ethics that we need to abide by so that everybody is safe and respected.
We've jinxed each other like twice so far.
Hey, we're on the same page, man. There's the Boy Scouts of America. We talked about Boy Scouts before, but they have the Scout Oath, which is... Oh, you know Scout Oath?
Which one is this? So a scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly.
That's a Scout Law.
That's the Scout Law, yeah.
Scout Oath is on my honor. I'll do my best to do my duty. So there's the oath there. There's the law, which is like a list of attributes. Like it goes, a scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful. All these things that come into what you should be. There's the motto is be prepared. So these are different kind of creeds that are being placed on you. Also, just being a citizen of a country. As Americans, we have, in the Pledge of Allegiance, we pledge allegiance to America and to the Republic, for which, we do that because we are taking upon ourselves kind of a somewhat of a creed, that what it means to be an American or a Boy Scout or a Spartan or a samurai or a employee at Kinko's or whatever the company is,
Yeah, I think and a creed can be so many different things. It can be spiritual, it can be personal, it can be physical, it can be religious. I think a lot of people have shared parts of their creed are religious to a certain aspect. And so I had kind of actually just researched, creed, and we kind of use that definition of creed that you shared at the beginning. But some of the ones that I found was a creed is a set of beliefs or principles, opinions that strongly influence the way people live or work. A creed is a formal statement of religious belief, a confession of faith. That can be a creed as well. A creed is a system of belief, principles, and opinions. Kind of my own personal definition of what a creed meant to me. What it was, a creed is a compilation of principles that, when combined, defines why we make our choices.
I like that.
That was kind of something that I had put together.
Put that on the quote board.
Yeah.
So one of the things I liked was, well, why do we need a creed? And what I think that it is it empowers people to handle ethical dilemmas by already having a system in place by which they can fall back on. So one of the things that a buddy that we know that we used to work with, he always said, you don't find Jesus on prom night. And what that basically means is that on prom night, you're not going to all of a sudden decide to be virtuous when you're out with your girlfriend, doing who knows what. You have to if you have had to make those decisions beforehand, because you're not going to make those decisions on prom night.
Yeah.
And you know what I'm talking about. If you know, you know.
If you know, you know.
And so that's what a creed is that it's a set of beliefs that you can establish so that when you are confronted with a situation that is an ethical dilemma, you already know what you're going to do because you already have that creed as a guide, and you've already made the decision on what you want to be like.
Yeah, there was this was months and months ago. I don't know. This is kind of right after we started the podcast. We're trying to kicking things off. We had a couple episodes under our belt, and we got together. We actually got together and we got sushi. Remember that? And we listened to. We both had listened to a podcast before we came together, and we were kind of talking about it. And one of the principles that they were talking about was, basically, it was people don't succeed by simply just sticking with something. That sticking with something always doesn't mean success, right? Working without a plan or living without a creed, I will add, is as foolish as going to sea without a compass. You can go to sea without a compass, or you can launch your boat without a sail, but you're not going to get very far. If you go to sea without a compass and you go out into the middle of the ocean,
full steam ahead.
Yeah, you can sail as fast as you can in a certain direction. But if you don't know what direction that is, then you're to the mercy of the wind.
Yep.
And you might hit land somewhere, and it might be good or beneficial. But it's pure coincidence at that point. You need some kind of guideline, some kind of code. What is the quote? If you don't stand for something, then you'll fall for anything.
Exactly.
Who is that said that? Was it?
I don't know. I don't know who said that.
Yeah, but I like that quote.
It's a good quote. Totally agree that you have to have that direction. Or I've kind of put it akin to, it's like if you're, shooting like if you're shooting at a target, and there's no circles on the target, then how do you know if you're getting where you want to go or not? You can't just shoot and then draw the circles in. That's not how you grow. That's not how you become better as a man or a woman. You've got to have the target in place and then try to achieve that. And then, so that's more of a goal setting. But I think goal setting and making goals are very tied to your creed. They are very similar because your goals should be the action items of your creed.
Yeah, I think one of the guests we had on, I think it was Sean, Saltwater Sean, he was talking about he had a mentor that told him, is what you're doing, is that getting you closer to your goals, right? Are the choices you're making, is this the choice that you make when you wake up in the morning, is that helping you get closer to your goals? If it is, then great, keep doing it. If it doesn't, then don't do it. Cut it out or switch it up or change it a little bit. So it kind of goes along with why is it important? Because they're stepping stones, right? You're not just going to go from zero to hero in one day. It takes an entire lifetime to build a creed. Now that doesn't mean that you're not going to be doing good things or making good decisions until the end of your life. No, but that experience in that learning new things and growing your personal creed and set of beliefs, it will continue to evolve. I think it could potentially change some points too. You could believe one thing as you're growing up, and then maybe you have kids, or you get a different understanding, a different perspective of something, and maybe a portion of it might change. So
I think that the principles might stay the same though, but you will grow in that. Like, for example, let's just say right now you say part of my creed is being a kind person.
Mm-hmm.
I want to show kindness to people. I want to say kind words to people. So maybe right now that's just simply just waving to people at work or whatever. And so maybe you're at that level.
Or even just maybe I need to stop gossiping.
Yeah.
So maybe it's I need to stop doing something.
Yeah, maybe it is. But maybe down the road, and that's why I say you say like you're building a creed is something that happens over your lifetime. That doesn't mean that you're just constantly adding on attributes, but you're working on those attributes.
Perfecting those attributes.
Maybe in 10, 20 years, maybe you're like, kindness to me looks like secretly giving a family in need like an entire week's worth of groceries on their doorstep and $1,000 gift card. Like maybe that's kindness. Maybe you're at that point where that is your kindness. I mean, that's a whole nother level than just saying hey to someone or stopping gossiping or stopping being mean. So as we work on these principles, I want to be kind. I want to be brave. I want to be assertive. Those will increase over time as you begin to work on them. It's just like muscles. One of the quotes I love from Bruce Lee is he says, "I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times because he's mastered that kick." Just like with those attributes you talk about. If you know what attributes you want, just continue to work on those. And then, like you said, sometimes you might add on more as you go through life and you learn more. But building that and then maintaining that and continuing working on it is so important.
Yeah. I think that leads right into, how to build a creed. We talked about what it was. We talked about the importance of it and having that code, right? The code of chivalry that the knights abided by, or the code of Bushido that the samurai lived by. Maybe it evolved over time, but it was something that set them apart from others. The way that they acted was more, I don't want to say more respectable, but it was held at a higher standard than just the average person.
Yeah. One of the quotes that I like is, and I've mentioned this in several podcasts that we've done, but there's a author and speaker named Stephen Covey, and he talks about 7 habits of highly effective people. And the second habit is called beginning with the end in mind. So if you just think about what that means, he says this is one of his quotes, one of the best ways to incorporate habit 2, or beginning with the end in mind, into your life is to develop a personal mission statement, like a creed. It focuses on what you want to be and do. It is your plan for success. It reaffirms who you are, puts your goals in focus, and moves your ideas into the real world. Your mission statement makes you the leader of your own life. You create your own destiny and secure the future you envision. So I think that this is so important, to have a personal mission statement or personal creed, and not just lean on the ones that have been laid on top of you, like I mentioned earlier, like, U.S. citizen or a Boy Scout or an employee of X company. You need to choose what creed that you want, because it's much more powerful when it comes from within, rather than someone just telling, hey, these are the set of beliefs that you need to believe in. Here you go. You're not going to believe that as much as if it were to come from you personally.
Yeah, I think that all of those creeds that you have been held to the standard of previously potentially play a part into
shaping your
creed. That's one of the things that actually I talk about in how to build a creed is sharing your creed with your family. You and I both are married, and we have 4 kids, and our kids are still young, and so this principle of creed is kind of their learning, right? And we're all learning together. But one of the things that I thought would be cool is whenever your kids become of age, they maybe understand the principle a little bit more, have each member of the family pick a creed word or a principle that they like, that they feel they want to live their life around, and then create a family creed. And like I think we've said before, put that up on the wall. And anytime that a family member, maybe it could be a teaching experience for the kids. If one of the kids in their word or their creed, their contribution to the Thomas family creed is honesty, and then maybe there's a time where they weren't very honest. And so we can use that as a teaching moment and say, look, your contribution to our family creed was honesty. Mm-hmm. And we are all held to that standard of honesty. And we're held to that standard and that creed. And so we need to live that. That's part of how we make our decisions and how we treat others.
Absolutely.
And so I think doing it that way, each child, but not only each child, but each person in the family, husband and wife and whoever else, shares, and they each take responsibility for the decisions that the family's making. And maybe, obviously, the parents make the decisions in the family, but to be able to have kids have a backbone in that, I guess, or like a support,
part in that,
part in that to say, Mom and Dad are going to help to they're going to live this way as well. We're all going to live this way, together.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you can apply a creed to your kids, and that's kind of the same thing as if a company applies their creed to you. It's not as powerful as if it comes from you. And that's exactly what you're saying. And I think putting it, like you said, putting it in a place in your home where people can see it is pretty powerful because you're reminded of that. Like, you're looking at it and you say, okay, those are the things we believe in this house. Like, we're encouraged to keep a picture of Christ in our home because if you see that picture, you're reminded of what that means. People throughout all of history have held reminders of death or of life or of their loved ones, or like lockets, or rings, or we all wear reminders all the time. So to have a reminder in your house of what it is that your creed is so powerful, and definitely recommend that.
So, in talking about building a creed, for me, it was, okay, well, what is the principle? How is it done? And for me, it's like when you build a brick wall, you do it one brick at a time. It actually reminds me of that Johnny Cash song, "One Piece at a Time."
Yeah, where he puts together the car. Yeah.
So basically, I'm gonna tell. So the whole premise of the song, it's a funny song. It's called "One Piece at a Time" by Johnny Cash, and he works at like a Cadillac dealership. And
no, the factory, not the dealership.
No, not the dealership. He works at a Cadillac factory where they build these big, massive Cadillacs. And he started working there in like 1949. And basically, he always wanted a Cadillac that was long and black, he said. And so basically, he devised a plan. He knew he'd never be able to afford one. So he devised a plan that over the whole career of him working at this Cadillac factory, he was going to take home with him in his lunchbox one piece at a time. So, he says, some days I went home with a bunch of gears in a lunchbox. And another day, I got, we snuck out an engine in my buddy's mobile home, he says. And then, so finally, like 20 years after working at this factory, they decide to, he retires and he's like, all right, I have all the pieces I need. We're going to put this car together. And basically it's for all of these years of all these things. And so like there's two headlights on the left and one on the right, and
the holes are all different.
The holes are all different. The engines don't match. The engine doesn't match up with the chassis and all that kind of stuff. And so they just kind of jimmy rig this whole thing together, and it's like this sight to be seen, right? And his wife's like, "I don't think this is gonna work." And so finally he puts his whole car together and it works. Takes it down to the car dealership, or takes it down to the DMV to title it. And they're like, "Well, what year is it?" And he goes, "What year is it? It's a 40, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, right?" He goes all the way up to like the 60s, and he's like, it took the whole staff to write it up. But basically, the whole premise of the thing is just one piece at a time, right? He was diligent, and guess technically stole the entire car over his career, but he did it one piece at a time. And then after a life journey, basically an entire career of one piece at a time, he had built something that was admirable, let's say.
Yeah. I think that it's what you can do to start building your creed is, one, maybe write down a list of traits that you want to live by. And then when you do that, maybe transform those into some statements. For example, kindness. Let's just say kindness is something that you want to exemplify in your creed. You might take that word and you say, okay, I want to put that into a statement of what that means. You could say something like, I will treat others as I wish to be treated. I will dedicate myself to acting courteously in my day-to-day interactions with others. Despite my mood or current life situation, it is important to me to have a positive impact on the people I come into contact with. Like maybe that's the statement for kindness. Or maybe it's, I want to stop gossiping about people. And so that can obviously improve over time, but you need to make some specific action items about what that attribute is. Now, I think I've mentioned before in the podcast that what I do with my boys is one of my goals this year is for every month for us to do a attribute of the month. And some months I do it right at the first day of the month, and some other months I do it mid-month. Some months, I think 1 or 2 months, honestly, I've done it like the last week of the month, just because I just get really busy or whatever. But every month the kids are like, what's our attribute of the month? And actually they asked that last night, and I was like, okay, well, this month it's delayed gratification. And you ever heard of the marshmallow test?
Yeah.
So I did the marshmallow test with them.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, okay, here's a marshmallow. And I sat my oldest down. I was like, here's a marshmallow. You can eat it right now, or you can not eat it, and I'll come back in 2 minutes and give you another one. He's like, how about 4?
That's negotiation is a different month.
Yeah, he's a negotiator. He's just like me in that fact. So I'm like, no, you can have another one in 2 minutes.
If you don't touch this one in 2 minutes.
He's like, okay. He sat there the whole time. I came back in 2 minutes, untouched. And so I gave it to him. And then I said, okay, I'll come back in 2 more. If you don't eat, you can eat them now. But if you wait 2 more minutes, then you can have a third one. He's like, okay. He just sat there for 2 minutes. I came back, gave him 3, and he was like, yes. And so, like, he's my oldest. He's almost 7. And for him, it was just so easy. And he's like, this is awesome. This is like the easiest thing ever. But like delayed gratification is such an indicator of future success. And it's very interesting. My next oldest, he was 5 years old. I put him in there, and I was like, all right, Jax, here's a marshmallow. You can eat it now if you want, but if you don't eat it, I'll come back in 2 minutes. And actually recorded him doing it. I'll have to post the recordings. And about 2 minutes in, he takes a tiniest little snip. He just pulls the tiniest little snip off of it and puts it in his mouth. And then I went back in there and I said, Jax, you took a bite of it. And he's like, just a tiny snip. He's like, I didn't eat the whole thing. I'm like, buddy, it doesn't matter. You ate it. You ate some of it. And he's like, but the whole thing is, but most of it's still there. I was like, sorry, buddy. And then so the next 2 days after that, he's been asking if we can do that experiment again so that he can not eat it, so that he can get the 2 other ones like his brother got.
Yeah, well, my oldest one would have been like, I got 3 and you only got 1. I'm like, oh, jeez.
Yeah, so, but anyway, then after that, we went and watched a little cartoon on YouTube about what it means to have delayed gratification. And we talked about, they just went through that experience. So I said, what does that mean? And I said, Jax, we watched some other videos of the kids doing it. I was like, Jax, that guy ate his early just like you did. He's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, when we have delayed gratification, we talked about the benefits of that and what that means and how he could have got other ones if he had waited. So it was a really good lesson. I think just building those, that's how we kind of are building my creed in my family right now in that manner, is talking about an attribute a month.
That's awesome. I really like that. One thing for me, and really, I mean, if you look at it, the tenets of our podcast are motivation, experiences, and exploration. So how we are building our own personal creed is through experiencing or through doing more of these things. I wanted to say exploring, but that's one of the things there. Yeah. But exploring motivation and exploring, having new experiences, talking with people about our own experiences and about their personal experiences, and exploring new things that we would have never talked about before anyway.
Yep.
And so those things are helping us to build to build that foundation and to build up on that career as well. One thing for me, and part of my personal creed and something that I love doing is, and I actually did this before we even kind of came together with the podcast, but I love quotes. I really get inspiration from quotes, and I actually have a whole notes thing in my phone that is just like full of quotes that I see a quote and I'm like, oh man, I really like that. And so I was just going to share just a couple of my quotes that I scrolled through and picked some of the ones that I liked and stuff. So, these are just some that have helped me to stay motivated in my career my creed, and has they have helped me to maybe identify a specific principle in my creed and say, I want to live that way, right? I want to try to do it this way. So one of the ones is by Robert Frost, right? The best way out is through. That's one quote that I kind of liked. Another one.
Into the fray.
Yeah. Another one, impatience never commanded success. That was another one that I liked by Edwin Chapin. Another one, this is one that I really like, is, do you remember that show Dual Survival? Or Dual Survivor on...
Well, the two guys that went out in the woods. One was like a hippie guy and the other was a hunter guy.
Was a military guy. Yeah, so one of those guys, one of the hippie guys, I guess, his name was Cody Lundeen. And he he was the guy that he never wore shoes.
Yeah, I remember
he just walked around. It doesn't matter if they were in the desert, he wouldn't wear shoes. If they were in the Arctic, he never wore shoes. He just put like maybe a little sock on or something like that to protect from freeze burn or whatever. But he never wore shoes.
Freeze burn.
Freeze or
frostbite, you mean?
Yeah, that's what I said. But one of the things that he said, and he was a minimalist, right? He said, knowledge is power and it's lightweight. And so the other guy always was, military guy is always like, oh, it's all the equipment and to carry this backpack and I got to do all this. I'm just strapped down to the nines. And this other guy, he had so much knowledge just about the world around him and survival, and he could make things out of everything. And so, knowledge is power and it's lightweight.
Yeah,
it's one of the things that I had. But there's just a couple quotes that I really liked. A last one, they from the movie The Patriot, right? Do you remember when his son goes and joins the army and he's like
the Joker?
Yeah,
Heath Ledger.
Yeah, Heath Ledger. So he goes and joins the army, and his dad, Mel Gibson, he doesn't. He's kind of delaying, and then there's all this stuff that happens, and somebody, I think it's the son, he says that he said, I'm sorry, or something like that, and the dad says, you have done nothing for which to be ashamed. I have done nothing, and for that I am ashamed. So basically he was telling his son, you've done nothing to be ashamed of. But he was retrospectively looking at himself and saying, I have done nothing, and for that I am ashamed. And so that quote has always really stuck with me in number one, procrastination, right? And number two, just inaction. There has been so many experiences for me personally that I'll see something and I'll be like, oh, I need to do that. I need to get that done. And then I'll delay or whatever else, and then the time will pass, and then it'll be like, oh, I got one day to do it, and then it just kind of doesn't work out, or it falls through, or something like that. And it's, man, if I would have done that right when I thought about it, then it would have been so much better. And so that's actually one of the parts of my own personal creed, and what I've kind of tried to build around is, I don't know if you want to call it diligence or action or whatever it may be, but whenever I am prompted to do something, or whenever I get an idea to do something, to not say, oh, I'll do it later, to try to just do it now. It might take 5 minutes to do it, or maybe it take longer, but just do it, because if you don't, then you'll potentially regret it, and I hate regret.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey guys, I just wanted to take a quick break and say thank you for listening to this episode, and invite you to support us on Patreon. As a loyal supporter, you will get exclusive access to 2 additional episodes per month, which are not released to the public. You can find the link to our Patreon page in the episode description. Let's get back to the show.
Those are really good quotes. Thank you for sharing those.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear more of those. One of the things that I actually have an example of kind of a personal creed or like a rule that is kind of controversial, actually, and I'm kind of torn on this, but I'd love to discuss it with you.
Okay, let's do it.
So this is called the Billy Graham rule. Have you ever heard of this?
No.
The Billy Graham rule.
I've heard of Billy Graham.
So Billy Graham was a big evangelist, pastor, really big, kind of in the 90s. I don't know. He was big here in Charlotte, at least, but I think he was big nationwide. In fact, really big, probably in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s.
I think Franklin Graham was his dad, right?
No, Franklin Graham is his son.
Oh, so
Billy Graham is a dad.
So Billy Graham was earlier, was probably 70s, 80s.
He was like a TV preacher type thing. So his rule is to avoid spending time alone with women to whom he is not married, or to whoever. The idea is don't spend time alone with a woman that you're not married to.
Yeah.
So Vice President Mike Pence, he kind of took this on. His rule was to never eat alone with a woman other than his wife, and that he wouldn't attend events featuring alcohol without her by his side. And so there's a lot of different angles to this. Let's talk about the pros, and then we'll talk about the cons. Some of the pros are that, maybe it's in the sense of like, I don't want to be put into a situation where I'm flirting with another woman, or my wife's not there, or my wife wouldn't approve of something that I'm saying. Or also, in light of a lot of the recent Me Too movements, it's like almost like a liability protection type of a thing.
Accused of something.
I don't want to be alone with a woman in a conference room alone, because if her feelings turn sour, even if we're amiable right now, if her feelings turn sour against me, who knows what she could say against me, or who knows what innocent thing, if we're talking and I'm like, oh, and I touch her on the shoulder, that might be perceived later down the road as being inappropriate. So, and if you have another person there, now he didn't say, it just says alone. So I'm sure that if Mike Pence was out to lunch with, 3 people, another guy and a woman, then it would be fine. But it's just like he didn't want to be alone with someone else. And so those are kind of the pros, and I can see why that would be. Some of the cons, though, I do understand as well. Just to put yourself in the shoes of a woman, and you're in a company and you're trying to network. A lot of the senior leaders are males, and you're like, hey, I'd like to network with you. Maybe can we go out to lunch? And the guy's like, yeah, no, I'm not going out to lunch with you. And you're like, man, like I don't get the same opportunity as another guy would, because you would go out to lunch with a guy, but you're not going out with lunch with me because I'm specifically a woman.
Yeah.
I worked at a company once where I knew it was right out of school, and it was me, the owner of the company, and this woman who's a secretary. And she said that when she was hired, she wasn't hired by the owner. She was kind of hired by a part owner that wasn't really involved in the day-to-day of the business. And so she came in, and she's like, oh, I'm here now to be your secretary with the other part owner that was really the main one in the office. And he was like, what? And he was like, oh, man, like, I can't believe this. And, we should, and like, he said that on her first day, he was like, in the morning, like, his mom like was going through some kind of tough thing, so he started crying about that. And then she was like, this is really weird, this guy's crying. And then he's like, well, we have to go to the client meeting. He's like, well, maybe we should drive separately. No, maybe we should just drive together, because then we can talk on the way there. Maybe we should drive separately. She was like, I can drive separately if you want. And he's like, well, I guess we'll just drive together, because that way we can talk. And he said that while they were in the car, he started crying again, because he's like, oh, we shouldn't have done this. We shouldn't be in the car together like this. We shouldn't be driving together like this. We were alone in the car. And then she's like, Kurt, she's like, dude, this is my first day on the job, and you've already cried twice. You need to get it together. And I just felt so bad for her. I'm like, from her perspective, I could see that. I was like, well, like, what does this guy think? That he's just like such a stud that like any girls can just absolutely lose her control, or that, that is kind of a thought about
that. That was almost more unprofessional than, she wasn't being unprofessional at all.
No, she wasn't.
What he was doing was very unprofessional.
Oh, totally. In fact, he told her, he's like, oh, I wanted, like a walrus type girl for the front office, not you. She was a very attractive single mom, and I'm like, dude, come on, man. And that was really frustrating to me, because she was a very kind person. She was a great person. In fact, I still follow her on social media today. She's a great person, and I'm like, man, that is very hard. But I can kind of see it from, I don't know, like I said, I can see it from both angles. But it's an interesting topic, and I know Mike Pence has definitely been kind of blasted on this. Obviously, there's some different angles on it, and I can see both sides of it. But this is an example of a creed or a rule that he lives by, a personal rule that he lives by, to maybe prevent him against infidelity or something like that. One of the arguments I did see that is when people say that when you make one-on-one interactions with the opposite sex like fearful or or like taboo, then when you do have those, occasionally it makes it like a sexual thing.
Yeah, I think that awkwardness, if you make it awkward, can be perceived as like some kind of weird tension that can make the other person feel uncomfortable. And
yeah,
I mean, I think
it's
definitely hard to I mean, because I work with a lot of women as well, and a lot of my managers have been women throughout my career. And I mean, you have to have one-on-one meetings with your manager. I mean, I guess you could say, no, I don't feel comfortable meeting with you alone. We need to have another person. But I mean, that's kind of like,
that's weird.
That'd be kind of weird.
Well, yeah, it's just hard. I think that women should be treated like men in the workplace. I mean, I've been in a couple of situations where a woman I've gone out to lunch. I went out to lunch with, I've had a manager, and we went out to lunch once, and she was a female. Went out with another gal who was I was in this mentorship program, and she was an older lady that was kind of wanted to mentor somebody at the company, and I was kind of new, and I was like, I wanted an older mentor that could help me, that I could just ask questions to that I wouldn't ask my manager, about like pay scales and stuff like that. And we went out to lunch, and she was very kind, and I'm glad that I had that relationship with her. But I was always very open with my wife and communicated to her who I'm going out with, what I'm doing, and I think that generally my wife would. It's just a very tough question to ask, because my wife is like, well, I don't want you going out to lunch with girls, on its surface, but then I could you kind of turn around and say, I might not get opportunity. If I have that rule, maybe I'm not getting the networking opportunities, or maybe the other women aren't getting networking opportunities. So it's such like a collision of like maybe an old school mentality with some reason I can see with like a new school like equal rights mentality. But you can't deny the fact that women and men are attracted to each other, and that doesn't mean always, but it's just a hard thing.
Yeah, I don't know. It's definitely a balance. I think the number one thing that you said is communication.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, I remember one time I was in college, and we had this I was in this group, and in this group there was 4 of us and 3 guys and 1 girl, and we had to go on this retreat with our class. And then on the way, and I drove, and on the way back, 2 of the guys lived in the same apartment on one side of town, and then on the other side of town, it was like, I don't know, 5 minutes away, the girl lived. But the guys, I had to drop the guys off first for some reason, and then now I was alone in the car with this girl that was, my age, and we were in college or whatever. I was married. Actually, she was married as well. But I actually texted my wife and was like, hey, I need to take this girl home. I'm going to be in the car alone with her for 5 minutes or so until I drop her off at her house, and then, I'll be right home. And it was just that communication. I mean, my wife's awesome, and so she was just kind of like, okay, all right, that's fine. Thank you for letting me know. I mean, that's a big deal.
Anyway, that doesn't have to do much of the creed, but I thought that was just an interesting thing we could discuss.
Yeah. So I had a story. The story of Beowulf? So Beowulf, right? Beowulf was a guy. I kind of want to go into a little bit of the story of it and the background, but basically this is like an old poem from like the, I don't know, 40. Sometimes like medieval times, maybe actually before that, way before that, and it was just it's a fictional poem that was written, but basically I like this one portion of it. They actually made a movie out of it as well,
with Angelina Jolie.
But it was a weird movie. It was CGI. It was like an animated movie, but it was like CGI realistic, and so it's interesting. It's a good movie though. But basically, there was this the king of the Danes. His lands were being terrorized by this monster named Grendel, and Grendel was like this giant who was really ugly and just and was deformed and all this different kind of stuff, and basically that it was terrorizing the land and was killing people and killing sheep and all this sort of kind of stuff and cattle and burning houses and just wreaking havoc on the whole land. And so the king basically put out this decree and called warriors to come and to, kill this monster. And nobody volunteered but this one young man named Beowulf. And he stepped forward and said, I will kill the monster. And so the story goes, he gets his group of guys together, and they go out and they go to this one massive hall that is always, basically it's kind of always a terror point for this Grendel monster that's going around. And so they kind of bait this monster into coming in and attacking this big hall, this big building that they're in. And Beowulf, he decides to fight the monster without any weapons or any shields at all. And so he's just going to just straight hand to hand. So he ends up fighting this monster, and they have this big epic battle. And then basically what happens at the end is he ends up ripping one of the arms off of this beast. And he rips its arm off, and then it runs back to where it's cave or whatever, and it dies. But in the movie, I really like this part in the movie. In the movie, it's like the end of the battle, and he's running around, and he's just getting this monster or whatever, and he has actually pinned up against the door, and its arm is like locked in the door, and he's pulling on its arm, and right before he rips the arm off, he says this line, and this is, I guess, just how it was translated. So, but he says, I am Ripper, I am Thrasher, I am Slasher, I am Gouger. I am the teeth in the darkness, the talons in the night. Mine is strength and lust and power. And he goes, I am Beowulf, and he rips the monster's arm off.
Nice.
Right? And so it's just this epic accumulation of what it is. But basically, the whole thing of what I wanted to say in sharing this story was that little line that he said at the end of this epic battle that he had with this monster, right? I am Ripper, Thrasher, Slasher, Gouger. I am teeth in the darkness. I am talons in the night. Mine is strength and power. That was like his personal creed.
Sounds like something out of Game of Thrones. The Watchers on the Wall,
yeah,
the protectors of the night.
Yeah, the Night's Watch. But that was like his creed. That was what he lived by. And so really this was the part of the story. One of the themes of the story is this heroic code, and the heroic code for Beowulf consisted of this extreme loyalty and this pride in his people and his group, who he was with, and his abilities, and then his glory. Or not his glory, but glory of whatever. And so, whether or not I agree with every single aspect of his creed, it was just kind of cool to me because it was like everything he did was built around this creed. And it was like his mantra. I mean, he repeated it in the middle of a battle before he ripped somebody's arm off because he's like, this is who I am. This is why I make my decisions. This is why I do what I do. It's almost like his battle cry. I thought it was kind of cool.
Yeah, that's way cool. Have you heard that? I don't know if it's a poem or a quote or something that says like, fate turns to the warrior and says, a storm is coming. The warrior says, I am the storm.
Yeah. Yeah. Or it's like that thing that I actually sent you the other day. It was this military guy. And he was, it looked like, I don't know if he was a general, but he was a very decorated officer. And he was talking about war. And he was saying, we have seen war. He said, we do not want war. We will avoid war if we can. But he said, but if we can't, I can promise you that someone else will raise your sons and daughters.
Yeah.
And it's just like, boom!
That was awesome. I was like, that's roasted, man. Like, you don't want to come up against me because you'll be done.
Yeah, and so I don't know. That was just kind of a cool story that has always kind of stuck with me, and actually it kind of influenced me into almost building like a sentence mantra or a sentence creed for me that I can like memorize and talk about and tell myself and everything else. Maybe in a day where I need some help, or on a day where, maybe I need some motivation, or I need whatever else, I don't know.
I am the watcher on the wall. Yeah.
I am the talons in the night, the teeth in the darkness. So
yeah, that's cool. I like that. We'll have to make sentences like that. I don't have one right now, but
yeah,
I do have a kind of a little quote though, and this is kind of just in general about building, just about your creed. This is something just kind of echo of what I said previously, but this is a little more succinct. I said, there are many organizations, people, and institutions that will try to push a creed onto you. Be mindful of what creeds you allow to affect your own creed. A personal creed will guide you to the person you want to become, so make sure whatever influences are whispering in your ear are in line with those beliefs.
That's awesome. That kind of reminded me, I had another story I could share. Do you remember the show Boy Meets World?
Yeah.
So we didn't have cable growing up, so we didn't always get to
Boy
watch
Meets World I thought Boy Meets World and Even Stevens was the same thing for the longest time.
No, Even Stevens I think was just outside of our generation. Just outside of you and I. But so basically, Mr. Feeney, right? He's like their teacher and their neighbor.
Yeah.
Right. So Mr. Feeney, this is the last episode. This is kind of the whole culmination. They're all older. They're all getting ready to graduate from high school. And this teacher had been with them through their whole school career, I guess. And he was sitting in their classroom, and there's 4 or 5 of these kids, the main characters, and they're sitting in this classroom, and he's kind of giving them one last life speech. And I can't remember exactly all what it says, but he kind of says some things like, believe in yourself, dream, try new things. But the one thing that has always stuck out to me that I always remember in that one line, I actually don't even remember any of the other show, maybe one episode here and there, but he said, he goes, do good. And then one of the smart girls, Topanga, I think her name was, and she was like, oh, don't you mean do well? Because that's like the grammatical correct way of like do well. And he was like, no, I don't mean do well. I mean do good. Like do good things.
Yeah.
And that always stuck with me because you always get corrected when you use the word good and well. And, oh, it's well, not good. But in this specific instance, it was do good. Like do good things. And that always stuck with me. And that's kind of how that has been another thing that's added to my own personal career, I keep saying career, my own personal creed. And then one of the other kids says, well, I think I'm going to be a decent person that cares about others, and that's your fault. is what he tells the teacher, and then he gives him a hug and stuff. But the last quote that I had, this is actually a quote that I had put together after studying these things, says, building your personal creed is a journey that will take a lifetime. Cling onto what is good and let it guide you. Enjoy the journey. That was my quote on building a personal creed and why it's important.
I love that. I feel like we blasted our audience with so many quotes and so many motivational things that they're just like overwhelmed right now. They're just like, man, I got to re-listen to this episode because there's just so much.
Would you be okay with that?
Yeah. It's just, heck, I'll probably listen. Well, usually I don't re-listen to the episodes because I literally was here talking to you about it, but this might be one I'll go back and listen to again just because I think there's so many good things that, to have these in my mind would be great on a regular basis. So, again, everyone, we're going to be posting a lot of this stuff on social media. Maybe I'll post some different creeds and you guys can guess where they're from.
Yeah.
And, definitely follow us there. We're active on Instagram, active on TikTok and Facebook as well.
Yeah, you can watch this on YouTube as well if you want to watch the video of the podcast, or you just want to have it playing in the background while you're doing whatever. So we're there as well. Drop us a like, subscribe, leave us a comment. We appreciate all the feedback that we get. It's always great to hear from listeners.
Yeah, and check out our Patreon. You know, we've the Loyalist. We have one tier. It's the Loyalist, $5 a month, and you get 2 extra episodes. And we do put a lot of energy and time into researching those episodes, and
as well as the archive of existing episodes, which is continuing to build. So
and you get a Brothers Creed sticker, a decal sticker,
a nice decal sticker.
So we'd love to, if you guys would love to support us and get those extra episodes, we'd be delighted. So
all right, well, this has been great. Let's build this creed that we have learned about today. Let's build it together.
Let's do it.